Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
streaming, please. All good? Brilliant, thank you. Declarations of interest, members, we will take those as we go. An apology has been received from Councillor McClellan. Do we have any others from the floor? Okay. Online members, we have Councillor Ratcliffe, Alderman Barr, Alderman Tinsley, Councillor Alexander and Councillor Nelson so far. Okay, members, without further ado then, we're going to move to 3.1. Do we have any questions on that one? No lights on 3.1, okay. Then 4.1, and Claire is going to present this one for us.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is a decision item and relates to the Newry to Portadown Canal Task Force. So following discussion at the September meeting of this committee, it was decided that the Chair and Deputy Chairs of this ES committee and the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Economic Development Committees would represent Council at a task force for the Newry to Portadown Canal. So I'm pleased to report that the first meeting took place on Monday the 10th of November. In your packs this evening are a number of papers which were discussed at that meeting. And I'm also happy to report that our Deputy Chair, Councillor Michael Rath, was also appointed the Deputy Chair of the task force at that meeting. Minutes will be provided to you in due course, but for tonight it's recommended that you approve the draft terms of reference and division document attached. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I'll also like to declare that I am a member of the task force. Can I get a proposer and seconder who isn't on it, please? I'm going to bring in Councillor Mallon.
I'm just declaring interest here as a member of the task force.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Alderman Berry.
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Berry. I'm going to bring in Alderman Moultrie then, please.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, members. All agreed? 4.2, and Claire, are you taking us through this one as well?
Thank you again, Chair. So this is a decision item as well, and this relates to the review of the caravan and camping terms and conditions. So members will be aware that we have three caravan and campsites in the council. There are two managed by my team in CSP, and there's another, Clare Glen, which is managed by our colleagues over in Health and Recreation. So a number of incidents were reported to me earlier this year in terms of the use of e-scooters and e-bicycles, particularly within Gosford Forest Park. Unfortunately, one of those incidents related in damage to a caravan, which was quite expensive as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of this report, we are seeking to update the terms and conditions. These are provided to everybody who books their caravan and campsites through our booking system. And the system goes live for fresh bookings for 2026 in early January. So this is why it's been brought before you tonight. The other point to note is that in April there was a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Kate Evans, which sought to update the council bylaws. And that is a substantial piece of work and will take some considerable time working across a number of departments. So in looking at the terms and conditions for our caravan and camping bookings, there's an opportunity to try and rectify it and deal with some of the concerns that have been raised both by officers and by elected members. So within your pack tonight, there is a copy of the draft terms and conditions. Now I must draw your attention to a small error that I've picked up this evening in terms of that. There's a double negative. So I propose that the new wording would be in terms of e-bikes and e-scooters, that these would be prohibited in the caravan and campsites. So members, with that, you're asked to approve the draft revised terms and conditions as attached at the appendix. Thank you.
Okay, members, I have a number of lights on. I'm going to need a proposer and seconder. I'm going to bring in Alderman Berry first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Claire. I'm happy to propose it. I think it's a very sensible move. As one who has a caravan, I know the dangers of it, and I see young ones flying around in these constantly, and it's very dangerous, especially even if there's dogs on leads with owners and they come around a corner and the next thing, it has happened in the past. So I think it would be helpful, so I'm happy to propose it. And on that point, in relation to to the discussion about bylaws. Maybe at the next committee meeting, if a report could be brought in relation to dog control, because I know these are dangerous, but the amount of people that I've spoken to recently where dog owners are letting their dogs off leads at Craigavon, Gosford Forest Park, the lakes here. I spoke to a man on Friday evening who got bit last year as a result of one off on a lead, and the owner didn't really seem to care. And I think I would like to know how proactive our dog wardens are in relation to these public spaces to make it safe for everybody, because if a child was bit by a dog, this would leave this council in very bad light. So maybe at the next meeting, maybe a report could be brought as to what we've done to date, what fines have been handed out, and how often do we monitor these sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Barry. I'm going to bring in Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this one and appreciate the motion that I brought forward. Claire, will take a bit of time to go through. It is quite lengthy, but it is important that we go ahead and do this in regards to the caravan parks. I'm surprised there's only been one report. I witnessed myself one of the e-scooters pulling out in front of a member of staff whenever they were driving around the forest park, so I'm surprised nobody has been injured yet. And in regards to the dogs, Alderman Barry, that happens all the time. All the time. My own dog has been bit while walking around the lakes, and unfortunately it comes down to responsible dog owners, and they're not. They're just irresponsible. They won't even pick up after their dogs, and it's disgusting. And no matter what we do in this council, it'll all come down to the dog owner being responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I'm going to bring in Councillor Alexander, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just really maybe a question for Claire, just to help clarify. When we say e-bikes aren't permitted, are we talking about them being ridden? Because, and I mean, I'm thinking about Gosford here specifically, because a lot of people are coming to Gosford to ride their bike around the trails, and if someone is disabled, then potentially the only option for them is to have an e-bike. And look, I'm absolutely in agreement that we can't have people riding e-bikes, around cars, around caravans, that sort of thing. But is it a case that we're asking people to dismount at a point, or are we just saying flat out that they're not allowed to have them? Because surely people are going to bring them to the park to ride them around, ride them around the trails. And I don't want to kind of, I want to be as inclusive, as inclusive as possible whenever we're thinking about this. So maybe just some clarification there, Claire, please.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander, and it's a very good point that you raised there, and something that we have considered. I suppose the intention behind the change in the terms and condition is due to the speed at which the e-bikes and scooters can be ridden, sometimes 25 to 30 miles per hour, whereas in the likes of disability scooters and things have speed restrictions, which wouldn't typically see them operate at those speeds. So our intention to have people dismount bikes. We recognise that e-bikes are popular on our cycle trails, which we have invested heavily in within the likes of Gosford Forest Park. So we wouldn't want to be discouraging people from using those, but we will be using a common sense approach in our enforcement of it and encouraging people not to be riding the bikes or scooters within the confines of the caravan park, not the whole park.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Nelson next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies, I am on my way over. There's a couple of things, I suppose, that caused me concern with this. Firstly, it's not equality screened, and, I find that astonishing that we wouldn't think to equality screen something that may mean both our disability constituents or our constituents who are elderly and the impact this would have on them. Obviously, I mean, I can definitely see the point for e-scooters, but I would have a concern and certainly wouldn't support a blanket ban on e-bikes here this evening. Firstly, without an equality screen. Secondly, Claire talks about enforcement. We can't enforce the situation with dogs in our parks. We can't enforce people keeping their dogs on leads. We can't enforce people picking up after their dogs. And I find it really hard to believe that we are going to be in a position to be able to enforce this. So we won't support this evening without the equality screen, and going forward would be proposing that whilst there's no issue with e-scooters, we need to take a relook at e-bikes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, I'm going to pass over to Claire to answer that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson, for your comments. If I could maybe take some of the main ones there, and I'm happy to pick up with you in a conversation as well, if I miss anything at all. But it's not our intention to exclude anybody with a disability, and I accept that I neglected to do an equality screening in terms of this, but I'm happy to do that in the next number of days, linking in with our equality officer to do so. So happy to take that action point forward. The other point in terms of enforcement, we do actually have some enforcement powers in terms of how we operate our caravan and campsites. We do have the opportunity, if the situation warrants it, to exclude people from booking with us in the caravan and campsite, so it's slightly different from dog enforcement. So we do have some limited powers available to us to address severe antisocial behaviour, but it's all proportionate in terms of the actions that are undertaken, and there is a responsibility on parents to supervise their children whilst on our sites, which I think is still included within that terms and conditions in terms of the caravan park. But if there's anything else I missed, Councillor Nelson, happy to take up any other points. Thank you.
I think Councillor Nelson has indicated to come back in. I'll bring you back in, Councillor.
Apologies, Chair. I hadn't. But yes, like I appreciate work on inequality screening would be helpful. And if it needs proposed this evening that we postpone it to full council, happy to do that. But again, reinstate the position that whilst I can see the reason for a blanket ban on e-scooters, I don't see a reason for a blanket ban on e-bikes. And so if we're going to move forward and amend our bylaws, we need to be specific about that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to bring in Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. And just like to thank Claire for the report. Look, we all have a responsibility here, obviously, to protect all the owners of their caravan parks and facilities. So I do support it. You know, I've seen, scooters and things flying about all over the place, and it really is an accident, unfortunately, waiting to happen. So I do agree going forward that this is the way we should do it, to try to protect everyone, and then also Alderman Barry discussed about the dog file, and I totally agree. Owners of dogs obviously have a responsibility. It isn't the dog's fault. Unfortunately, there's some owners that don't take responsibility for their dogs, but most people do take responsibility to keep them safe. But I think it's vitally important, again, that we try everything in our powers to alleviate any issues going forward. So thanks again. So I'd fully support the ban of the bikes and this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. I'm going to bring in Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. Yeah, look, Councillor Nelson was raising a very similar point to myself, and I think her proposal was very sensible, that we wait for the equality screening, and I'd be more than happy to defer this to full council after that is done. Not happy with the wording around the bikes for the reasons I have stated earlier, and I think deferring to full council and getting that equality screening done, and just a little more thought on the bike situation. As I say, I think sensible choice would be to have people dismount at a certain point rather than just a blanket ban. So not sure, because I know it's been proposed and seconded, the initial recommendation, but I do think, just in light of what Claire has said then this evening, maybe deferring to full council would be the sort of smart approach here on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Alderman Berry, are you content that we hold off until that equality screening takes place? I'll bring you in.
Well, I've read the report. It's not a blanket ban. Could Claire maybe outline that again? It's certainly not my understanding that it's a blanket ban. It's about controls in relation to the use of them when they're in our parks. Is that correct?
Within the caravan park. and campsite in those areas where people are residing for a period of time.
I'll bring you back in, Alderman Barry.
Well, thank you, Chair. You know, as I say, it's not the blanket ban, it's within that caravan park area. So on the basis of that, you know, if Councillor Nelson and Alexander is happy and content with that, that's clear advice, and we will await the equality screening. And Claire is in that competent position that if there was queries or issues with it, then it'll be brought to full council on the 15th, if that's okay. But this is not a blanket ban. It'll be daft if we put a blanket ban in, but it's just about control within a very small designated area in these different parks. So, you know, my proposal stands, and I think if there's an issue with the equality impact, then that's different. But Claire can make that call.
Okay, members. Are members happy that the recommendation is amended that a quality screen will be brought before full council? Okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, I'll bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in to say that the purpose of this was never to have a blanket ban across the entire park. We need to use a wee bit of common sense here. If we've got e-bikes and scooters that can hit 20 mile per hour, we don't want them going through a car park or where people are camping and staying overnight. For goodness sake, just common sense. Dismount the bike. If you want to use it on the trails, use it on the trails. But there's no need to be flying through crowded places and car parks on a scooter or a bike at 20, 30 mile per hour.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Okay, members, we've all agreed on that. We're going to move then to 5.1, and Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is a decision item report on the household recycling centre opening hours. Officers have, over the recent months, been working to harmonise the opening hours of our 9 recycling centres. The standard current summer opening hours at the majority of the sites is Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:45 p.m, with some of the larger sites opening at designated evenings during the summer months. However, on some of the smaller sites in Keady, Market Hill and Tandragee, they currently operate between 11 a.m. and 5:45 p.m, which is an hour later open than the other sites. So to further harmonise the opening hours, it is recommended that from summer 2026, the opening hours for Keady, Market Hill and Tandragee recycling centres are amended to be Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lisa. And members, this is the decision item, so I'm going to need a proposer and seconder for this one. Proposed by Councillor Evans. I'll bring in Alderman Moutray.
Yeah, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. I'm going to bring in Councillor Scott Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just if you'd indulge me on this, this is speaking about summer 26 and recycling centres, minded that this time of year many people will be heading to recycling centres, make room for Christmas coming up here. So, but there'd be a lot of people in our borough who wouldn't be able to access our recycling centres and would depend on council doing the bulk lifts. And I've been made aware this week that we've had a bit of a backlog and delays in getting bulk lifts done, bulk collections. And I just have a few questions I want to raise around that. And I know Lisa's been working very hard in the last couple of days to sort of come to some sort of arrangement to get this addressed. But just a couple of questions, Lisa, if you don't mind. Can you advise why there was a backlog or delay within the bulk collections? How many collections are outstanding? And what are the plans to get this service back up and running again? And any of people who have contacted me have said that there has been delays and unable to get it. Will council reach out to them if there is plans in place to get a bulk lift sorted? But thank you, Chair, for indulging.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I'll bring Lisa in to answer that.
Yes, thank you for the questions there as well. And yes, we are aware that there has been a few resourcing issues, I suppose, with the bulky waste collection, be that with staffing or with vehicles. We are addressing that at the moment too. I looked at the service earlier on today, and there are slots that are available in each of the depots over the coming weeks as well. So there are slots there. And where there is a backlog, we will be putting out additional staff on in evenings or on the weekends as well to cover any backlog where necessary. One of the, we're also working on another scheme would be to put in a centralised bulky waste collection service, which we hope to launch in the middle of December as well. So it'll be a standalone bulky service with dedicated staff and dedicated vehicles. So that will be the mid-December time as well. So we can bring some information back to members then in committee in January to let you know how that scheme is going. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, I'll bring you back in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa. So just to confirm, if anybody contacts us who have had difficulties over the last couple of weeks in getting their wage, are you happy enough if I can send their details through to yourself or a member of your team to make sure that's addressed in a timely manner? Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. And if they even want to phone through to the centralised number, we do have a dedicated number of spots within a week throughout the week, so they'll need to phone to make sure that they book in a slot in each of the areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, members, that's been proposed and seconded. We're all agreed? Okay. Item 6 is correspondence, of which we have none. So can I get a proposer and seconder to go into committee for consideration of the confidential items of business, please? Proposed by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Alderman Moutray. Okay, thank you. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the Council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I get the ICT officers to please turn off the feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed, please? meeting can proceed again in open session. That's been confirmed, thank you. Okay, members, can I now seek proposer and seconder to agree the recommendations made in committee, proposed by Councillor O'Dowd and seconded by Councillor Evans? Okay, members, I have one item of AOB, and that is Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You would nearly think I haven't spoken in school all day, but I assure you I have, or Lord Mayor, Madam Chair. So I wanted to raise the issue of our car parking ports with a particular focus at South Lake. I have had a number of complaints and I have spoken with management on this. So basically what we have is a situation in South Lake where there is an individual parking there all day and then driving off in a bike and staying there from literally 9 to 5. And the reality of that is because whilst I loved our intention of keeping these free, and I really did buy into that initially, is unfortunately then that is open to abuse. And therefore the impact that we want to have, which is quick changeover, people using the centre getting the ability to use this, environmentally friendly, it's just not happening. So could I ask that we explore either introducing costs or indeed that someone has to go into reception, perhaps when we look at a time token, but if we could look at options, would fully support at this stage a cost being introduced. Can I also ask that it's not caught up in a wider council review of carports, because this is becoming a real issue for people. There's official complaints have been received and formal complaints being looked at, as well as freedom of information requests. So let's just get ahead of it. So that's my proposal this evening, Lord Mayor, or Madam Chair, goodness me.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Nelson, for your AOB. Yeah, look, certainly we are happy to look at this as a specific item, but equally, obviously, we want to look at the wider context around our off-street and on-street car parks as well, and our facility car parks. So content that we try to expedite a solution in relation to this. Elected members and customers, we have noted their concerns in relation to this particular matter. So yes, happy to action.
Just on that, Jonathan, can we just get a bit of detail and a bit of an update on what plans there are for EV chargers and council-owned building car parks? There's 2 of the Palace that I know of. There's none here at the Civic Centre, and with more and more people making that move to EV, what forward planning is being done to make sure that our staff and visitors have adequate provision?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, and I think it feeds into the second point that Councillor Nelson made in relation to a wider review of our electrical charge points across our facility and our off-street car parking. So that is something that we have started to look at, and I think it is that coordinated and consistent approach around the provider, the charge points, looking at tariffs and the options associated with that. So look, happy to maybe take a further report back to committee in the hopefully not too distant future in relation to an approach that maybe council and members could consider.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that. Can I bring in Councillor O'Dowd, please?
Thank you, Chair. And I know Councillor Hockin said last night he was the Grinch. I think I'm going to be the Grinch tonight. Quite a while back, I did ask what the costings was. I had sent an email. I'm not sure if it was yourself. What the costings was to have the EVs and what the charge was till the council. I didn't get a very clear answer at that time. I was just wondering if you could look into that to see if they're getting free at the South Lakes, what is that costing the council? Because there's nowhere else that they get them free.
Thank you, Councillor O'Dowd. Yeah, look, I think that maybe was a question in relation to South Lakes Leisure Centre and the charge points there. I'll follow up with the Director and the Head of Department in Health and Rec, and we'll get back to you on that matter.
Alderman Greenfield, I bring you in.
Thank you. I think I suppose it is something that's changed drastically over the last number of years. They were all free originally, even in public places right across, and I know that's changed drastically now. But I suppose and I agree totally, they should be parked there all day and charged, no problem. But you do just have to be careful when you're charging that you're not trying to charge. The charging points now are doing it in 15 minutes and 10 minutes and stuff, and there's a massive difference in prices. So just be careful that we don't price ourselves out of it. That it's no good for folks coming in, because I still think we need chargers that people can just top up while they're there and move on. So it's just I think there is a wider piece of work around it all, Jonathan, as you've said there, but I certainly agree that you can't be parking all day in the one spot for other folks. Thank you.
Okay, members, I have no further lights on, so that... Oh, Councillor Evans, apologies. He's not coming. No? Oh, get out.
Try.
Sorry, that keeps, there's something wrong with that microphone. But anyway, I just wanted to come in on the back of that and say, if it's the same person that Councillor Nelson's talking about, I reported this over a year ago. The exact same person leaving their car charging all day. And I was told as well by Darren Cosby that we don't pay for these charging ports at all, that they are free. And it was a year ago he told me that we were
I think it was along the same vein as the point that Councillor Nelson was making, and officers will go away and look at that. So members, I have no